Well, so to start just with an introduction of adaptive governance, which is the concept that I've been using in some of my research projects. And there are multiple definitions of adaptive governance, but there you can see one of them by Chaffin and collaborators, and they define it as a range of interactions between actors, networks, organizations, and institutions emerging in pursuit of a desired state for social ecological systems. Actually, the concept and the field of adaptive governance is pretty much related with the field of social ecological systems, as coupled systems between human and natures, and complexities and interactions between the subsystems of which are part of this. And so adaptive governance has been proposed as a suitable strategy to manage the uncertainty and complexity that is inherent of this social ecological system. And a few years ago, there was a literature review by these authors that I'm not able to pronounce, but in that review, they found that some of the building blocks of adaptive governance are those that you can see there in the blue box: adaptive capacity development and flexibility, and that allows the actors of the system to cope better with increased uncertainty. Another building block of adaptive governance is collaboration, and that can be termed as networks and partnerships between multiple actors, multiple stakeholders, including government, non-government, and also responsibility sharing between those actors. And also adaptive governance involves knowledge integration and learning. And so different sources of knowledge contribute to better understanding this unpredictable and complex social ecological system, and being ready to adapt when unexpected changes or events occur. That lit review also showed that most adaptive governance research has been conducted on water systems, and mostly focusing on the global north. A few years ago, we started a research project funded by the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research. That was the Gobernagua project. Tomás Oliver was part of that team. And so we used the adaptive governance lens to analyze water crisis in Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. And we investigated how basin committees dealt with water crises that have occurred. And so the formation of basin committees, or in a broader sense, river basin organizations, sometimes are called basin forums or watershed councils or basin water boards, or multiple terms. But the formation of these basin committees is a sign of a shift in or transition in water governance from top-down command and control or centralized approaches towards more participatory and integrated approaches to water management. It has been argued, and in a way also there's some empirical evidence showing that these basin committees can provide a platform for bringing together different actors and sources of knowledge, and with potential for building networks of collaboration, and also fostering learning at the individual and social levels. In this presentation, I will focus on the Uruguay case, and not only drawing from this Gobernagua project, but also another project that we just finished in the most, let's say, the most important watershed in Uruguay in terms of water supply for more than half of the population. Uruguay is a small country in South America with 3.5 million people, and this one of the basins that I will be talking about provides water for around 2 million people. And so in this presentation, I will be looking at the contributions of basin committees in Uruguay to different dimensions of adaptive water governance, such as collaboration among actors, coordination, participation, and flexibility. Before explaining more about the basin committees in Uruguay, let me tell you a little bit of history regarding water governance in the country. And so, like in other South American countries, in Uruguay, water governance has been gradually moving from a conventional centralized mode towards more decentralized and participatory approach. And there was a legal milestone in a referendum that took place in 2004, when the society voted to approve a constitutional reform which determined that the state would be in charge of the services of water provision and also sanitation. And also that reform determined the participation of users and civil society in all instances, in all cases of water planning, water management, and water control. 5 years after that constitutional reform, the national water policy was passed, and this law proposes the sustainable, integrated, and participatory management of water resources. And it includes some definitions of participation and also some conditions or criteria for the basin committees and how they can be formed and what they have to do. And so the creation of these the basin committees was determined by this law that I just told you about. They have a consultative and advisory role to support water management and planning. And actually that's one of the reasons for conflicts and between different actors, because some of the social movements who fought for the constitutional reform, they were expecting a binding nature of these basin committees, which didn't happen in the law and neither in practice. And so that's something that it's still like an ongoing discussion. Until today, 14 of these basin committees have been formed, and they are all presided over by the Ministry of Environment, which has Directorate of Water and a Directorate of Environment. And most of these committees are in charge of the Water Directorate. These committees are composed of government institutions from the 3 levels: municipal, subnational, which we call actually departmental, national. Uruguay is a unitary country, and it's divided in 19 administrative units or divisions, which are called departamentos in Spanish. And so in addition to government members, also there are public and private users involved in these committees, and civil society. And there, by civil society, that means social organizations, unions, and also the academic sector many times is part of that groups. And users can involve farmers, for instance, industries, depending on the basin, is the exact composition of each committee. There's flexibility in that, in the composition, and also there's not a set number of members that these committees should have. Well, regarding the duties of these committees, in addition to bringing together multiple actors and promoting participations, their duties include to make contributions for the basin management plans, and also to provide considerations regarding water use projects and initiatives that could impact the territory. And so we designed a multiple case study approach, and we chose 3 basin committees of different scales and with different trajectories in southern Uruguay. As I commented, this is related to 2 projects that now have finished, and we are still working on some publications based on that. And in particular, the analysis of 3 basin committees is something that I'm working on with 2 colleagues and friends, Marila Lázaro and Natalia Diaz. Tadeo. Yeah, so there you can see a comparative table and the map. The three basins are located in southern Uruguay. They all provide water for human consumption, agriculture, and livestock, among other users. And they all face water quality issues, in addition to water quantity, but the most urgent, I would say, is with regard to water quality. The scale is different, as you can see. The Santa Lucia River Basin is the one that I told you about, that supplies the 60% of the country's population. And it involves 6 departments, so 6 administrative divisions or units of Uruguay, whereas the other 2 cases consist of relatively small lake basins located in a single administrative division, Canelones in one case, Maldonado in the other. And even though the number of inhabitants is relatively slow, it increases importantly during the summer because of the high tourism season. And there you can see just 3 pictures of these cases, the 2 lakes and the Santa Lucia River. And so, as part of the Gobernagua and the Govidro research projects, since 2019, we've been collecting data and getting involved in these 3 basin committees and doing interviews and participant observation and analyzing documents and like legislation and the minutes of the meetings. And for instance, during the pandemic, one of the committees was more active in terms of doing Zoom virtual meetings, and so we were there by Zoom and also in some of them in person. And the interviews that we conducted involved different actors, including government of different levels, social organizations, farming sector, and also academic sector. And it was over 60 interviews in total. And also we used to do, like, after doing some preliminary analysis of the data, we would come to the committee or to have a workshop or some kind of discussion to share the findings with the participants, the members of the committees, and see what they thought about them and how those findings could be implemented in a way or used to make changes or improve the committees if needed. For data analysis, we followed a qualitative approach using thematic coding. And so now shifting to the results, there you can see some descriptive information of the 3 committees. In the 3 cases, the committees arose in response to critical environmental context of the basin. So in a way, reflecting shortcomings of the existing institutional design. The oldest committee and the one with the highest frequency of meetings was Sauce Lake, which was formed in 2010. And this is the only committee of the 14 in the country, which is led by the Environment Directorate of that ministry, and the rest depend on the Water Directorate, where actually it's a very small group of people who is in charge of convening every meeting of the committees and doing everything that they have to do from one meeting to the next, although because of that, there aren't many meetings of all the committees. Actually, the need for more human resources in that ministry for that task, like everything involving basin committees, is a frequent claim, both by members, by people who work at that ministry, but also by other members of the committees who see that there aren't enough human resources. The sectors of the member organizations are pretty similar between the 3 cases, as you can see, involving government, farmers, social organizations, etc. However, the Santa Lucia case, which is the largest in scale, is the one with the highest number of members, formally with around 50, although in practice there aren't that many. No Basin committee administers or administers funds or makes decisions about financial resources, and this is a difference compared to Basin committees in other countries, like in Brazil, for instance. Turning now to collaboration and coordination. They were both coordination and collaboration among actors. They were identified by participants as highlights or accomplishments of the three committees. In the interviews, we will make questions about what do you think are the main accomplishments of the committees, or what are the drawbacks, or progress, or things depending on the case. But that allowed us to do that sort of assessment or evaluation of the committees based on the perspectives of participants, in addition to what we could observe at the meetings themselves, and in addition to what we could analyze from the actual minutes of past meetings. The committees allowed for coordination between government levels and sometimes within the same government levels, for instance, between the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, and between that ministry and the Ministry of Environment, and also between national government and subnational governments, those departmental levels that I told you about. Also, the collaborative initiatives involving government and non-government actors were diverse and included, for instance, monitoring of the basin and water body, and also different types of management measures. And in this, the case of Sauce Lake, that committee is the one with the most experience of collaboration and the least number of conflicts, in contrast with the Santa Lucia case, where conflicts prevail and tensions exist regarding the role of the committee, and the collaborative initiatives in that case, in the Santa Lucia case, have been very limited in number and duration and outputs, etc. And in fact, the Santa Lucia is the case with the highest degree of centralization in the actual operation of the committee, with no consultation for setting the agenda of the meetings and defining the roadmap. And so that contradicts with the Sauce case, where the process of defining the agenda of a meeting is something that takes place collaboratively via email. There's like a permanent email communication between the members, and at the meetings they make decisions about what they will do in that year or how they will work. And on the opposite side, the Santa Lucia case, the agenda is submitted, sent by email and with no consultation. And at the meetings themselves, members from the social organizations or academic sector claim that they are not having any power for defining the topics that the committee should address. So the topics that are brought for the discussion at the committee are defined by the national government, the Ministry of Environment. The three committees showed an important diversity of sectors in the member organizations. However, the involvement of subnational governments and farmers was generally limited. And the creation of the Basin committees as forums involving non-government actors was identified as such by the interviewees of the three cases as an accomplishment. So sometimes they would say just the existence of the committee involving all these different actors is an accomplishment that we've done. And not just the government, but also for social organizations to have that space to come and well, try to discuss or address some topics that are also of interest or concern to them about the basin are valued. However, and to different extent, the participants were unhappy with the limited decision-making power of the committee itself, given their consultative and advisory nature. And this is what I told at the beginning about the non-binding nature of the committees and the decisions that the committees make. This concern about the consultative advisory nature of the committees arose less frequently in Sauce case, where in practice the committee has had more influence or political impact on management decisions. For instance, they proposed a management plan, an action plan with management measures for the basin, and after a few years and related to a crisis in the lake, a water quality crisis, this plan was approved by the ministry and was passed as a decree from the ministry. Also, this is the committee that has been involved in most initiatives or projects impacting on the territory of the basin. This is still the Sauce case. However, like on the contrary, the committees of Cisne Lake and Santa Lucia River have been bypassed in critical context. So, for instance, it was only after important social pressure that the Cisne Committee convened to discuss a project of water transposition to the lake from another basin, and which the State Water Company had already started. So an academic actor, who is very active in the basin, found out that the water state company was already transposing water from a different basin to the lake. And he said, how come? This is something that the committee has to analyze and comment on. This cannot happen without consultation. And only after that, and also some mobilization from social organizations, the topic, this topic was discussed in the committees, although it's still taking place. And a similar situation happened in the Santa Lucia case, where a project which involves the construction of a new purification plant, taking water from the estuary of the Rio de la Plata, was at first avoided in the agenda of the committee. So they said, this is outside the basin, and so we shouldn't be discussing this. And it's totally interconnected, and that purification plant will be built to provide water for the same population as the Santa Lucia, and there are multiple interconnections. So after some complaints and pressures, etc., there were some meetings, 3 or 4 meetings that were organized to discuss this hydraulic project, which is led by a consortium of private companies within national government. But in those meetings, only the topics that were put forward by the government were those discussed. And also, we analyzed flexibility, both in consideration to the operation of the committee itself and the responses that the committees undertook in face of water crisis or unexpected events. We found that all the committees showed some flexibility in forming task forces or working groups to address relevant issues for the basin, but only Sauce Committee showed this ability in a continuous manner over time. And also this committee has proposed management measures to address the eutrophication of the lake, and it has made significant progress in monitoring the whole system through formal agreements of collaboration. The committee of Cisne Lake appears to be operating mainly on a reactive mode, calling for meetings only when there are critical situations or threats to address, such as a failure that occurred in the water treatment plant and affected the water supply, or the water transposition to the lake that I just told you about. In the Santa Lucia committee, rigidity appears to prevail over flexibility. For example, when there were severe floods that affected the local population in 2019, the government, in charge of the committee, was reluctant to accept the request from social organizations to include this topic in the agenda and roadmap of the committee. So it wasn't part of their priorities. So based on the analysis of these three cases, we can say that basin committees are complex settings, no doubts about that, and each committee is context specific. However, as found in other river basin organizations, scale does matter. And it seems that in larger basins, organizing multi-stakeholder processes is more laborious and it involves more conflicts. And this was illustrated by the Santa Lucia case in our research. Also, the research findings show that although to different extents, basin committees in Uruguay are allowing for some interinstitutional coordination, collaboration among actors, social participation, and flexibility. Nonetheless, basin committees appear to complement rather than replace the existing centralized management approach. As we saw, committees are many times bypassed. And so this suggests that the mere existence of basin committees doesn't necessarily reflect a shift in governance. Also, a concentration of power in upper government levels and other powerful actors, sometimes can be the agribusiness sector or construction companies, negatively affects the participatory dimension of the committees as well as the other dimensions, and this hinders a real transition towards adaptive governance. In two of the three cases that we analyzed, there's a risk of rigidity given that the operation of the Basin Committee depends almost exclusively on the National Water Directorate. Our findings, our research findings also show that fragmentation of functions and actions is still a challenge for interinstitutional coordination. For instance, the existing and prevailing conflict between the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture, and that's something that is observed and also identified by numerous actors. There are clear power imbalances among the different actors involved in the committees, and also even like during the meetings that can be perceived and observed. And for instance, the knowledge from members of social organizations tend to be undervalued as opposed to scientific knowledge or knowledge provided by academic institutions. And our research also showed that the existence of enabling legislation, even though it's important and it allows for the creation of these basin committees, that's not enough for participation to take place or for adaptive governance, etc. And we can see how the constitutional reform regarding social and user participation is many times violated. And time is not enough either, because the Santa Lucia Committee, for instance, it has gone through over a decade, and we don't see that it has been maturing over time. So these are processes that where multiple factors, both internal and external, affect basin committees. And one of those factors that I didn't explain, but we observed during the research, was how the change in national government or subnational governments can affect basin committees. A new authority comes in and can define that basin committees are no longer important, for instance, and the meetings are sometimes suspended, etc. Just to wrap up, in terms of ideas for future research, I think it's important to conduct more longer-term cross-case analysis of multi-stakeholder boards, such as basin committees and others, to deeper understand how these boards and these processes develop how they advance or set back, and what are the factors affecting these processes. And also, I think it's recommended to have further interactions between the fields of adaptive governance and public and deliberative participation. And that's something that we are starting to do with this colleague Marila and Natalia, and how we can like nurture the Basin committees with some criteria that come from the public participation literature, which says how the convening of the meetings, participatory meetings, should be, and that the facilitation of the process must be unbiased, and also some considerations regarding transparency, inclusion, and even the early involvement that these the participants should have and Basin committees should have. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your comments and questions.